Welcome back to the Romantasy Readers Podcast. You've got Alley and Nicole here, and we are officially starting our Crescent City SJM ACOTAR Massverse content.
Yes, so excited,
I'm
guys. I'm so excited.
I'm
This
super
is
excited. I honestly this is like SJM is what got me back into reading. Like I had not read in like years, probably like 5 to 8 years, maybe like one or two books a year, nothing major. And then I read ACOTAR, and the rest is history.
same, same. I hadn't read in probably a good 10, almost 15 years, and then I was walking past my local store, and Crescent City was actually what I started with. I saw that beautiful cover, and that pulled me in, having no idea the worlds that were awaiting for me. Because once I read that, I was like, "It's pretty good." Shame about that there wasn't a whole heap of spice in it, but got into then Throne of Glass, was obsessed with that. Then thought Akatar was maybe like her worst of the three books, like, I think that's just her little extra one that's not that great. So then jumped into that, and my mind was absolutely blown. And I fell in love with CRESCENT and Cassian, and the rest is history. Oh, I'm so excited to get into these worlds because it's just the way that she writes, her style of writing, the depth of her stories. They're just so epic, and
Mhm.
you just keep reading them. You read them over and over again, and it's been so fun to get back into some of these worlds again. I've just loved it.
Yeah. So in today's episode, we're going to give you a summary of Crescent City 1, and we're going to talk about theories. But I will say at the top, we're going to try in this episode to just keep our theories to the Crescent City books, so 1 and 2. And then next week, try to start bringing in the rest of the worlds. But I also don't know how well we'll do that. So because, we have both read the whole SJM, world. So I do think, I mean, we'll try to tag like, oh, this is an ACOTAR spoiler. Oh, this is a Throne of Glass spoiler, so you can forward. But I do think you're going to have the best experience with the next several weeks of episodes if you've read the whole kind of mass verse.
Absolutely. It's going to be
Yeah.
very difficult because as I've read these books and because I'm rereading all these books, mainly Court of Silver Flame and Crescent City 2, my brain is exploding with theories, but they're not just about one book, they're about all the books.
All the
So
books.
it's going to be really hard to keep it just to one, but I'm going to try and keep them at Crescent City just for now. And Ellie is going to lead this one today because I have not had time to read Crescent City 1 again. I have read Crescent City 2 and A Court of Silver Flame, whereas Ellie is all over Crescent City 1, so she's going to take the reins today.
Yeah, yeah. Before we dive into all the Crescent City content, we'll start as we usually do with what we're currently reading. I actually had a pretty busy reading, holiday. I read two books by an author called Imberly Ash. They're like a King Arthur retelling, but they're like as if in like a Fey world. So they're really, really cool.
Awesome.
I think the first one is like a court of Earth and Sky or something like that.
Yes,
It's hard to remember
nice.
the names, but look up Imberly Ash. They're really good. And we're so excited because she has agreed to come on our podcast. So keep an eye out for that, listeners. We're going to have our first author interview. We're super excited. She's an indie author, but these books are good. Both of them had solid 4-star ratings. Her third book is coming out in April, which I'm really excited for. So I read that. And then I'm currently reading a book called The Queen of Roses, which is also a King Arthur retelling in a Fey world. I kind of got hooked on the King Arthur Fey
And this is a
scenario.
different author. This is a
It's a
different
different
author from
author.
Emily
Yeah,
Ash.
yeah.
It's
It's a
so
different
funny.
author. This one's not quite as good, I would say. Like I'm almost done and I'm probably going to give it a 2 stars. So,
Ooh, well, that helps us support Emily Ash, doesn't it? She's going to
yes.
be
Yeah.
our first author. I'm so
It's
excited,
good.
guys.
I got it for free on Stuff Your Kindle Day. There's nothing like overly wrong with it other than it's just not. Maybe it's because I'm like comparing it to the Emberly Ash book or something. But anyway, that's what I've been reading. What have you been reading?
What have I been reading? Well, I have been committing to the mass universe. I have mainly been reading Crescent City 2 and A Court of Silver Flame. And that has taken a huge amount of my time because I've been
It's a
really trying to
lot of
thoroughly
scroll
read them.
undertaking.
So I had plenty to bring here. I also have been reading, I read Legendary because I'm finally getting into the Carol series. So I read some of that over the holidays. But I've had to finish at Legendary and put it down and not pick up Finale because I just had priority reading that I had to do. And I was like, I'm sorry, Finale, as much as I want to know what is going to happen, you're just going to have to wait because I have to enter maths first and I have to get through these books. And as I've said to you, it was really interesting reading Court of Silver Flame and Crescent City 2 side by side because I just loved returning to Court of Silver Flame. That was just 2 chapters in. I was obsessed. I couldn't stop reading, and I left Crescent City 2 by the wayside. I was just like, this is just not getting my attention. And then I realized a few days ago, I need to read this for our podcast. To keep reading. So I then committed, and it is not my favorite book, guys. I'm so sorry. I want to come here and have this amazing positive review, but I struggled with the first 3 quarters of this book, and I feel a struggle with the connection with Bryce and Hunt. I don't want them to be endgame. We'll go into theories on that later. I just still feel like they're relatively immature characters, and there's just all this light story that's a bit nuffy, that's not really going anywhere. And I'm just like, what is the point of this? Why are they doing this? They're just doing stuff just because to get to the bigger story. It was only that last 100 pages of Crescent City 2 that then just blows my mind. I
Right.
feel like it's like the first 3 quarters of the book, I'd probably give 2 stars. The last 100 pages, 4 stars. Last 20 pages, 5 stars.
5
Like,
stars. I think that's so fair though, and so reflective of how other readers feel about the Crescent City books. I've heard so many people, tell me like, I really want to get into Crescent City, but I'm just struggling to get through it. Even the first book. I mean, I didn't do like a full reread. I kind of like skimmed and sort of was like, okay, what's going on in this chapter? Okay, I can skip it, and then would read important chapters. But there's a lot there and it's kind of a slog. And I'll say for me, and I don't know if you felt this way, knowing now that Crescent City is going to cross into at least the Akatar world, it just made me care so much less about what was actually going on in the Crescent City world. So the
mm,
war, all the stuff with the rebels, I just am so uninterested in. I'm
yeah.
actually more interested in those tiny little details where they are talking about like the history of,
Yeah,
you know,
what's going to come in the
their
future.
world.
Exactly. And it didn't pull us in any way. I just felt like they're talking about the rebels and the mech suits, and there's so many characters. I literally started writing down all the characters because I was like, why can I not remember who Orphean is? Jaceba, just there's so many different names. Pollux, Baxtian. And so I actually started writing them down. There's well over 40. And now look, if I go to Akatar, maybe there's that many characters in that as well. But for some reason, I can remember each and every character. Well, maybe I can't remember their name, but I know who they are.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, I just don't remember them, and I also sort of don't care that much. It just doesn't. I'm
Yeah.
not attached to these characters. Like I felt like the romance. And sorry, guys, here I am jumping into stuff but the romance that happened in Crescent City 2 between Bryce and Hunt, I didn't really feel it. I didn't really. We didn't get that slow build up that sort of happened in the first book. They were just kind of chugging along and having this standard relationship with pizza and a vow of chastity and a sunball. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not
not very
into
epic. It's like they meet at work, right? If you think about it, like they meet at work, they kind of like become friends. Then they are like, "Oh, we kind of like each other, but let's not do anything about it because we have to work together." But then they're like, "Oh, well, we like each other a lot, so I
I'm
guess we're
sorry, but
mates." Like
that is
it,
that is
yeah, it's
not
not
an
very
epic romance that I expect from Sarah J. Maas. That is not an epic romance. An epic romance is waiting 15,000 years to
epic.
come
Yeah,
and rescue your queen. Just
yeah,
putting it out there for the future theories
right.
I'm gonna talk about in the future. That is an epic love story. This is not. And so I was honestly disappointed when they said that Bryce and Hunt were mates. I actually felt disappointed. I was like,
Yeah,
I'm like, "Oh, is that Endgame then?" Like, I don't want it to be Endgame. It's just I'm just hoping Crescent City 3 is gonna take from that last 100 pages and just become a whole different world. I wanna
explosive.
see
Yeah,
these characters grow. I feel like so many of them are still pretty much where they started from, with the exception of the, things they've had to go through throughout Crescent City 1 and 2. They haven't really grown as people. Like Rune's still in the same position. Ethan's, I guess, at an all-time low. He'll probably grow in the next book. Bryce is still the same. Hunt's more or less still the same. Like their
Yeah.
situation's different, but as a person, as they haven't grown or developed or changed. And I hope we're going to see that in the next book.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get too far into our theories, because I'm sure we have so many, we did promise readers that we were going to do summaries. So in this episode, we're going to summarize CC1, and then in the next episode, we'll summarize CC2, and then in the next episode, we'll summarize Akasif. So that way, if you're not rereading, as long as you listen the next couple of weeks, you'll get all the summaries that you need. So I worked so hard to make this short and sweet, but it's hard. It's almost 1,000 page book. There's a lot of details. So I'm gonna try to go do this summary as quick as I can, but we'll see how long it takes.
I'm the
Okay,
same. I
so
can I can either give like about a 60-second one where I'm like, nothing really happens for three-quarters of the book, and then the last 100 pages, boom, all this stuff happens. Or we can have 10 pages of going through each little step of every little thing that
and
happened.
all the
And there's
details.
no in between. There's no in between for these books because they're quite complex. So
Yeah, yeah.
go for it,
Okay,
Allie.
so this is my best,
You
bit.
can do it.
So, okay, so House of Earth and Blood, CC1. This book has 4 parts, and so I'm gonna summarize this by each part. So there's the hollow, the trench, the canyon, and the ravine. And that's important because the second book has 3 parts: the abyss, the chasm, and the pit. And those things together, those 7 things are like the, layers or circles of hell.
The circles of
Um,
hell. Ooh, love
yeah,
that.
so that's how the books are broken up. So I don't know, I don't know if it means anything other than, just a fun way to name the parts, but I just thought I would call that out for people. Um, Part 1, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on, but Danica dies in a horrific way, right? We're introduced to a lot of things, but it kind of is a sucker punch, you, like, get to see these 2 friends having a lot of fun, and then, you think the book is gonna go in one direction, and then Bryce's best friend dies. So that's what happens in part 1. Part 2, this is where things start to get interesting. Bryce is commandeered by Micah, the governor and kind of like head archangel, to investigate Danica's murder, because the attacks have started happening again, and he thinks that through her connection to Danica, she'll be able to help solve it. He assigns Hunt, Athalar, a slave in his Triari, which is like his leadership team, to help her as well. Meanwhile, her brother Rune is ordered by their father, the Autumn King, to find the missing artifact, Luna's Horn. It was stolen the night before Danica died. And eventually, Bryce, Hunt, and Rune all kind of realize that the demon they're hunting for is the Crystallos demon, which was created by the Prince of the Pit to hunt the Horn of Luna because it opens gates between worlds. And so they basically realize they have the same kind of like mission. Their top suspect initially is the human rebellion leader, Briggs, especially after there's bombing, but it turns out it's not him. Hunt visits the Oracle, who tells him that the horn can be repaired, and most importantly, that he should stay away from Bryce Quinlan. I have a theory for
Ooh,
that.
interesting.
um, they eventually realize that the footage from the night of the murder has been swapped out, and that the only person who could have done that is Sabine, Danica's mother. So she becomes suspect number 1, and that's how part 1 ends. Or sorry, part 2. Then we go into part 3. Bryce and Hunt investigate Sabine, but she tells them that she actually swapped the footage to cover up that Danica is the one who stole Luna's horn. Um, so that's really interesting. They meet up with Hunt's contact Therian, who becomes really important in future books, hoping that he'll have more details, but he doesn't really. Rune learns from a medwitch that the horn could be repaired by this thing called synth, which they also discover all over Danica's clothes.
Mhm.
And Therian reveals that Danica was on a boat where a synth deal occurred the night before she died. So Bryce is kind of like reeling. So there's all this information that she did not know about Danica. And I don't know about you guys, but I just get really annoyed with Danica. I'm like, why did you keep all this stuff from
I
your best friend?
know, there's so many secrets. There are so many secrets. Like, she had this whole other life happening, and Bryce had no idea. And I don't know
No
how you can
idea.
be best friends with someone and have that many secrets. And they weren't just about her being like the head of her pack and things like that. It was so much more.
It
And then
was
that
so much
only
more.
expands further. I don't even know how Bryce still likes her at this point, because if
I
my best
know, I
friend kept
know.
this much from me, I'd be pissed. I'd be really, really pissed.
Same, I'd be so mad. Um, so then we find out that Bryce knows a Prince of Hell, Adis, and that they actually previously met when she had visited the Oracle, and he like came to her as a cat. And I will tell you guys, that is a really good chapter to go reread. So
Mhm.
go find that
Amazing.
chapter with Adis and reread it because there's a lot there. Bryce discovers a hard drive in Janica's jacket that has videos of synth trials, where the humans were injected with synth and like then shredded themselves up. Therian alerts Bryce to a synth deal happening, and she goes with him to the boat and discovers Hunt there, which like, she's been betrayed by him. Micah arrives and makes these like massive claims, right? He tells Bryce that Danica leaked the synth, was addicted to it, that no one murdered her. She took too much synth herself and then murdered her pack and then herself. Um, and so part 3 kind of ends with the mystery apparently or supposedly solved, right? That it was just all Danica being this crap person. Um, Obviously we find out that's not true. So move into part 4.
Yeah.
Hunt's punishment is to be given to Sandriel. So that is his old lover's sister who he has like really bad blood with. And
Super
it is
evil.
basically a punishment to have to go back to her.
Mhm.
Um, and Bryce basically just like immediately forgives Hunt, which really annoys me.
Mhm.
She was like so betrayed, but then she's like, oh no, I can't let him go to Sandriel. Annoying.
Yeah.
And she tries to buy him from her for 97 million marks, but Sandriel doesn't agree. And then Bryce even tries to give herself in his place.
Yeah.
Um, which she agrees to and reveals to like the whole world that Bryce is the Autumn King's daughter. But
Yes.
Rune comes and kind of was basically like, "You're my property, due to Fey law, and you can't give yourself up," and that really makes her mad.
Oh,
Then the
Rune.
summit
We love Rune.
starts. I know Rune. Okay, I love Rune. We'll talk so much more about Rune. Then like on the last day of this summit, Micah isn't there, and he instead visits Bryce. She immediately realizes that something is off and has Jessica patch in the cameras to the summit. They basically all watch as Micah admits to being behind everything. He blackmailed Danica into stealing the
Yes.
horn. He injected her with synth. She was not like addicted to it. And he even like got the Autumn King to make Rune search for the horn. And so he discovered that the horn was actually tattooed on Bryce's back and that it is written, and this is really important because I have a theory about this, in the language of the universe. So more on that later. And he is going to use her to open a portal to get power to win the war. I don't know. I don't totally understand his motivations on all of this. It doesn't matter because like he injects her with synth and slams his power into her back. They think it doesn't work. Um, Basically Bryce is able to seal him away in a bathroom while she saves her chimera, basically like pet
Mhm.
Syrinx.
Yes. Yes.
And then she kills him. And she kills him in the most epic way possible. Okay. One, she retrieves the Godslayer rifle from Jessica's office and she shoots him,
Mhm.
which kills him, right? He's dead after she shoots him. But that's not enough for her. Then she
Nope.
gets Danica's sword out of the closet and she slices him in half, like vertically.
Mhm.
Then she lights him on fire and vacuums up his ashes. I
As you do,
forgot
because
all
then you really do not piss off someone like Bryce, like, because she will not just kill you, she
that.
will kill you multiple times and make sure that
Yeah,
there is no scary of evidence left that you even existed in the first place. You are now
yeah.
in a vacuum cleaner, so well done, Micah. We're glad you're gone.
Yep. And like everyone in the summit just watches it and they're like, huh, okay. Just don't even react. I just love it. Um anyway, then Bryce goes outside and realizes that the horn worked and it actually opened up portals to hell and that demons are everywhere. Being Bryce, she goes and helps to fight them. She doesn't get into the shelter in time and decides to use her starborn light to hold the demons back.
Yes.
Hunt saves her from a missile attack, but is injured, and so she realizes the only way to stop the attack and to save Hunt is to make the drop. But she doesn't have an anchor. Somehow she makes the drop with Danica's spirit as her anchor, which is apparently supposed to be impossible, but it's not. And she seals the gates. She heals Hunt. all is well. But then after the attack, Regulus, one of the Asteri, calls Bryce and Hunt and tells them that Hunt is no longer a slave. He's free, but they have to lay low. So that's
Mhm.
how it ends. But the epilogue, you guys, if you are only going to go reread one thing, you need to go reread the epilogue. It's just like a couple of pages. I had forgotten completely about this epilogue. It is a scene between Jessica and Adis. They know each other. They
Mhm.
know who her dad is. They reveal that Bryce has Thea's light and that they like are kind of waiting for Bryce and Hunt to come into their power. And that's
Yeah.
how it ends.
Yes.
So anyway, that I know that was very, very long, but I don't know how else to do it
That
without,
was actually good. Mine is even more dull and boring, and I've literally almost gone like sentence, but I've basically just rewritten the book in about 6 pages. I think I've gone, all right, this part's interesting, and then they go and do this, and then they go over here and they do that.
yeah.
It's very hard to pull this book together. Like there are other
Yes.
books where I can just tell you from my memory. I can just say, right,
Right.
this happened, and then they went here, and then they went, But this is so complex. The story is so complex
Yeah.
and sort of complex with a mixture of boring.
Yeah.
Like, you kind
Right.
of zone out a
Right.
little bit. Like, I don't know really what's going on, and I don't think I care because I don't think it's that important. And so it takes a lot of concentration to remember each little section of what
Yeah.
happened. But
I did my best. I'm
well
sure
done. It
there's
was very
really
good.
important
Very
things I
good.
missed, but hopefully, especially because I bet a lot of you listening are maybe going to reread CC1, CC2, but like you're not going to reread CC1. So, I wanted to give you enough details to kind of be like, here's the things that, were important.
Especially those areas that really stand out, which I think the Princes of Hel and everything they're talking about is so
Mhm.
interesting, and so much more of that comes out in Crescent City too. But it's really interesting that conversation, the epilogue with Adis, and I mean, do we go into this theory yet or not? But there's Apollyon and there's Adis, and Adis seems to be very focused on this war. And it sounds like that discussion was around getting them to come into their power and just really, really focused on the war that they want to bring back that they've potentially been waiting 15,000 years for. But
Yeah.
what about Apollyon? What about Apollyon? I read a page 666 in Crescent City 2, which if you need to just read one page that's going to blow your mind, read page 666 of Crescent City 2.
Okay, tell me what's on that page because I don't remember. And then I'm going to say something. So, but tell me what's on the page first.
Okay. So without having the page in front of me, so this is when Bryce has just been like they've just been declared as mates at Celestina's sort of I don't know party, and then she
Yeah.
goes to sleep that night, and Apollyon comes to visit her.
Okay.
This is
Okay. Yep. I remember this
660,
scene.
and it is their conversation. So he says, Adis wouldn't want me to come here to talk to you. Why? I don't know. And then he tells her about how Adis was in love with the last Starborn queen.
Thea.
And she's like shocked. She says, "Oh, I didn't know about that." And he sort of talks more about that. Biggest thing for me, he touches her face. Like he comes to her as like a golden, good-looking guy, but with fully black eyes. But he touches her face and he says, "When you learn the truth, come and visit me."
Come find me.
Now he says, "Come and visit me," not come and visit Adis. Come and visit me. And as we go through the book, like so Apollyon, I think, sends some hounds to try and I don't know. I think my thought is that he's trying to get her to fully come into her power because she kind of has to fight these and she has to
Yeah.
teleport, and she finally does that with the help of Hypaxia's power. But but then she kind of realizes later on, she thinks, oh, he actually helped me grow by doing that. Even though it was scary and challenging, he helped me do that. So I'm now rooting for Apollyon. I actually kind of want him to be endgame. And he is the ultimate dark horse, ultimate morally grey character. What are your thoughts, Allie?
I am shooketh. I am
Okay.
Okay, I do not think that Hunt and Bryce are endgame. All right, like
Yes.
I am
Yes.
also aligned with that.
Mm-hmm.
I've always kind of thought it was going to be Adis, right? Because Bryce has Thea's power and Thea's light,
Mm-hmm.
and we know that Thea and Adis were like lovers, like the love of Adis's life. But I love the dark horse idea with Apollyon. And okay, I was gonna save this theory, but I have to tell you because I
Yeah.
feel like it actually makes a lot of things make sense. So first, let me just call out, right? Apollyon, the Prince of the Pit, he is like the most powerful of them. He's sort of like the highest
Yes.
level, which would basically be Satan. And that reveal is on page 666. How crazy is that? I wonder if she did that on
I know
purpose.
that
Surely
is
she did.
there is no way that that was not there for a reason, that that was
Yeah,
not the page she chose to have that conversation on.
yeah.
And he's the
Okay,
most powerful. Yes.
now, okay. I think that Apollyon is Hunt's father. And here is why. Okay. So in
What?
that epilogue in CC1, they talk about how like Jessica and Adis know who his dad is and that he would be disappointed in Hunt because Hunt hasn't come into his power. But then they talk about how he would have been really proud of Hunt for like saving Bryce and all of this stuff. Okay.
Mhm, mhm,
At another point, when Adis comes and visit, this is all in book one. When Bryce summons Adis for the first time, he kind of looks at Hunt and he's like, "What is someone like you doing a slave?" Right? Which means that Adis, at the very least, recognizes his power. Okay. And when I read that epilogue, at first I thought it was Adis that was Hunt's dad because Jessica said something like, "How sentimental of you." But then Adis is like, "Well, you knew him best." So, kind of indicating that they're not the same person. And on that same page, on page 666, it says, Apollyon says to Bryce, Hunt was bred to hunt demons. He was
yes,
bred. And that is why Hunt was a demon hunter, why he was so good, because he was specifically bred to hunt our kind, basically.
yes.
Which tells me that potentially he was bred by Apollyon specifically to like hunt demons or to have like his kind of son in this world. And
Yeah.
what if Apollyon and Bryce are like mates? That like maybe that would explain why she kind of has this like mating bond with Hunt and why she's kind of attracted to him, but it's not
Mhm.
fully there because they are like that's his son. So it's like it has Apollyon's
That's
essence,
like
the essence of
I'm
their
getting
marriage.
very incest vibes now. I'm just like, "Oh,
It is a
this is
little bit
not
it is a
working."
little bit weird. But I don't know. I'm so convinced that Apollyon is Hunt's dad because Hunt is a bastard. We don't know. His power
Mhm.
also, they say multiple times that no other angel has his power.
Yes, and there was a part in Crescent City too where they spoke about your scent is different than every other angel. Like,
Yeah.
they said something about that. So he has
Yeah.
definitely got something that's not that. And yes, it could be some kind of demon. Well, he has that connection because Apollyon says, I it's easier for me to reach out to Hunt than it is for me to reach out to you. I can only reach out to you on this night because it's when the veil's the thinnest. Whereas for Hunt, he can come to him really at any time because maybe he's got some demon in him.
Yeah, or it's because that's it's his son or something.
Oh,
But that would be so interesting because we also know that the Asteri created the angels. And Hunt is part angel, right? Because his mom was an angel. So maybe Hunt is like part angel, essence of Asteri, and part, Prince of Hell. It just like, I don't know, it could be so cool, right?
it would be very cool. It would be very cool. It would definitely be great to find out that there's that connection. But then be also like, why are they in this world? Because and again, I won't jump too much into Crescent City 2 yet until we've gone through, I guess, the summary there. But like so the Asteri, they went into like hell first and then they couldn't stay there, so they had to leave. And then they ended up getting into Midgard, but then I think it just had humans on the planet, which weren't good food for them. So they ended up grabbing Fae and all
Okay.
different beings from all different places and bringing them there for their own personal massive feast of first light and second light that they're obviously after. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of so why would he have come here? Because it seems like the place they have the least connection with is hell, unless they wanted a part of that or he somehow got into Midgard. It's
I think I think that the Princes of Hell and the Asteri are like they have been battling for all of time.
Millennia.
Because I don't know why I didn't realize this before. I really should have. It's like super obvious. Other people might have realized this, but Crescent City is basically just like an angels and demons story, right?
Yes.
You have the Asteri, which are angels. They live in the eternal city, right? They consume light, which is what angels are always do. And then you have hell. You have the demons. The Prince of the Pit at some point even says that he, is the offspring of chaos, right? This kind of primordial power. So at the end of the day, I think that this is an angels and demons story. I think that the um the demons, are the princes of hell, have just been kind of like battling the Asteri and the angels for all of time. And
Yeah.
so, and that's why they say like we lost that, like, Apollyon even on that page says we lost that part of the war, right? 15,000 years ago because of Thea. He doesn't say we lost the war. He says we lost that part of the war. We lost that one battle,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Like that battle was
An ongoing
15,000 years ago.
No, it's been
And so
going
this
for
is
a really.
ongoing war.
No, and that's
Yeah,
so interesting. And I love that in this, your first go to is that, oh, hell's bad and angels are good. But what we're learning as this goes along is that angels are not good at all. They're actually quite evil. They definitely
right.
don't have any feeling or care towards the people that they're allowing to exist, really just for their food. Whereas hell seems to have a lot more of an attachment to the Midgardians
Yeah.
and actually seem to have a lot more care, or some of them do. I mean, we sort of see, and again, I'm going to jump into Crescent City too, because that's what I've read recently, where he goes to the mystic goes to the Prince of the Ravine, so like the bottom part of hell, and
Yeah.
he just wants to eat souls. Like he's just like, yep, I'm hungry, I'm eating, I don't have much care, and he sort of says, I'm not like my brothers, Adis and Apollyon, that actually want to be civil and actually care about people. I just want to eat souls. So he's really at that depth of just not having a whole lot of care. Whereas we're obviously seeing Adis and Apollyon are quite different. They have empathy,
Yeah.
they have care, they possibly have their own agenda, but they seem to care for people, care for the
Mhm.
Midgardians and Bryce and the, Starborn Queen and hopefully love
Yeah.
stories to come.
Hopefully, yeah. The other thing I'll add about this, like, Apollyon is Hunt's dad theory
Mhm.
is, so Hunt is named Orion, which I think is really interesting, and I
Mhm.
don't think SJM would have given him that name if it wasn't important. Uh, right, she could have just named him Hunt and left it at that, but
Yeah.
she says that his real name is Orion. In the story of Orion is actually the offspring of a god, of Zeus or Poseidon, kind of depends on what you look at. But in that story, I mean, and this is how, this is kind of weird, but this is just Greek mythology, right?
Mhm.
Zeus sort of appears as like a creature, right? To breed, Orion's mom or whatever. That's how Greek mythology always goes. But we
Okay.
also know that the princes of hell can come into the world, but only as lesser creatures, right? That's how Adis visits Bryce
Mhm.
as a cat. So I
Yeah.
could see that's sort of how Apollyon created Hunt with his mom, as he kind of came as another kind of creature, got her pregnant,
Interesting.
and
Mhm.
created this sort of like half angel, half demon combo, which is why Hunt is so unique. And that lines up with the Orion story
Ooh,
itself.
that's interesting.
So,
That's interesting. And that would outline how Hunt has come to be in this world. And potentially they
mhm,
wanted him as some kind of spy or some kind of, I don't know, to have some kind of connection to hell in this world. That's very interesting. I never thought
yeah,
of that theory before. And I don't know, but I can see how it could play out. I could see how
mhm,
that could actually be accurate, which is very, very interesting. I
yeah.
looked up the Greek mythology as well around Apollyon. And what was quite interesting
Ooh,
is that he is the god of music and dance,
hmm,
which I was like, we know how like Bryce always talks about her love of dance, her love of
yeah.
ballet. She's always upset that that's something that she can't explore. And I was like, well, that's a nice matchup, isn't it? Like that would kind
Yeah,
of
that's really
cover her.
interesting.
Yes.
That's really
She's also like
interesting.
I think the favorite of Zeus and one of the most powerful. So all kind of
Mhm.
standing to that. And I love what you said about that Apollyon is basically Satan. He's basically the strongest and most powerful of the seven princes of
Mhm.
hell. I love seven prince of hell stories. This is Kingdom
I
of the
know,
Wicked.
I
I
know.
It's like, as I
And
said, I want this to be Endgame. I want one of these guys, what Adis or Apollyon, I don't mind. It just so long as it's not Hunt, I want them to be Endgame.
yeah. In the trope of, like, hell versus angels kinda stories, when you read books that are those kinds of stories, you know, the demons or the hell, it always is better than you think they are, right?
Mhm.
And so I think it would be I think it would make a lot of sense and be interesting if this is like an angels versus demons story, that the angels are actually the bad guys and the demons are the good guys, because that
Yeah,
would really fit the trope. Uh, um,
that's it.
One more thing I'm gonna say on, Hunt and Bryce,
Mhm.
uh, and how I don't think they're endgame. I more on Orion. Orion in, like, every story is killed by his lover.
Yes.
So whether that's Athena, whether that's Gaia, obviously there's bunch of different stories, but basically in every story he's killed by his lover. So I think that potentially Bryce is going to kill Hunt. I don't know if it will be on purpose. I don't know if it'll be an accident. I don't know if it will be permanent, right? Like maybe he'll die, but then he'll come back or something. But it could be that, like, she'll kill him, but then, like, she's actually mates with Polyon. I don't know. I
Oh,
don't know. There's
I
a
know.
lot that could be there.
I should be like, "No, I should be so upset about that," and yet I'm not, because 'cause I'm like, "Yes, yes, Hunt, get out of the way.
You know
We need a more epic love story."
Yes. It's like, even when they, like, admit to each other that they're mates, they're like, literally just came down from the gym. Like,
Yeah,
it's not epic enough, you know? They're like, "Oh, we just, like, fooled around in the gym and said we love each other, and, oh, I guess we're mates now." Like,
yeah, yeah, and their first official
not epic
hookup
enough for me.
is, like, in a submarine, like, and, it
Yeah,
didn't exactly feel like, I don't know, lights, and I mean, I think they're in a nice garden maybe, but, like, but it
yeah,
just wasn't, and he was all overcome with, being, like, kind of Fae mate, like, he'd gone into, like, protective mode and he'd, like, switched off, so she had to, like, have sex with him to try and calm him down. But it just, I never felt a degree of connection. They're always just hooking up. It feels like they're in their early 20s and they're just, it feels like your first relationship, not your final relationship.
yeah,
And
yeah,
say it shocks me that he's her mate because it just doesn't feel like it's that level of intensity. I
no,
want more
and
than that. As I said, I'm just finding myself going, what would Trump make? What would Trump make? Is it that it's a god and that they can change it, or is this Sarah J. Maas kind of teaching us that she said in other books that just because someone's your mate doesn't actually mean that they're the right person for you? Like maybe
yeah,
she's going to really show us a story where even though Bryce has a mate, he's maybe not really allowing her to grow and develop as a person, whereas maybe Apollyon or Adis or whoever potentially might be Endgame might actually allow her to grow and develop. And that is what Apollyon does in Crescent City 2. He encourages her to grow. He puts her outside her comfort zone, maybe sometimes in a little bit of a dangerous way, but I mean, I think he knew she could handle it, to grow and develop and get stronger. It's just, yeah.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Sorry.
Um, and, like, even when Rune sees Day for the first time, sorry, I need to sneeze. Phew!
Poor
We'll have to
Allie's
edit
been
that out, just
recovering
leave
from a
it
cold this last week, haven't you?
It happens. You know, the like, at first I was like, "Okay, maybe the mating is just different, right, in Crescent City." But then Rune sees Day, the
Yeah,
Hind, and,
yeah,
like, has this, like, fey kind of, like, tropey moment where he's like, "That's my mate. I can smell her. I know it instantly."
yeah, yeah.
Bryce didn't have that, and she's
No,
fey,
no. It was
so
kind of like, I'm just like, we're just mates. Hey, it's like, hey, you're my boyfriend. It's like boyfriend,
yeah,
mate, same, same. It's not exactly the relationship that developed between Rune and the Hind, like, or Day, sorry. There we go. Well, I should have read Crescent City 2 by now anyway. Like, that was way more intense. You felt that relationship developing. I was so much more invested in their relationship than I was in Bryce and Hunt. So much more
yeah,
invested. It made me question Sarah J. Maas. It made me start going, has she forgotten how to write? She forgot to write these epic love stories? Like, where's the passion and the love and the all-consuming obsession that we normally get with
Yeah,
the relationships? But Sarah J. Maas has often in the past brought it
you
in book
trust her.
3, book 4, so
Yep.
that is what I'm hoping. That is what I'm hoping.
I was gonna save this theory for a future episode when we kind of are talking more about the Massverse, but it just fits in here,
Let's just do
so
it now, we can't
I'm
wait.
just doing it, okay? So, in Throne of Glass, right, we find out that not only is there this thing called mates, I can't remember the exact word, but there's this thing where, like, your magic is complementary to
Yeah,
each other. Do you remember
yeah.
the name of it at all?
No, but I remember Rowan and Aelin have it, like, they can, like,
They were
connect.
that and they were mates. So they were
Yeah,
like your magic kind of and it's sort of like the essence of your magic recognizes the essence of the other person's
yes,
magic.
yes.
When your magic is combined, it can like do special things. And that doesn't necessarily have to correlate to being mates. It just happens to for Aelin and Rowan. So my theory is that actually Hunt and Bryce, because again, we know that all these kind of fey creatures have all sort of come from like potentially a single origin, like a single world. So
Yeah,
I think that Hunt and Bryce are that, like that their magic is complementary because we've seen, right, like he
yes,
can power her when they kind of combine
yeah,
together.
exactly.
And that that is maybe confusing them to make them think that they're mates. And
I
like
love
that's
that.
why the scent changes and that's why like cuz there is that kind of deep soul level connection, but it's not a mate connection,
Mm.
it's a magic connection.
Yes.
So
I love that.
that's
That
my
is
theory.
so good. And that is so right because I swear when I read this, I just became more and more disappointed because I was like, oh, their magics work really well together. That obviously they're
Yeah.
mates now. Like there's all the pieces have clicked together, suggesting that this is endgame. But that is so accurate, and it doesn't always mean that they're mates. And it is interesting that everyone has confused it. Everyone has said, "Oh, well, your scents have changed, so obviously you're mates. Your magics combine really well together. That obviously means you're mates." But it's so true. And what we
Yeah.
also learned at the end of Crescent City 2 is that there are different kinds of Fae, and that they are obviously the Fae from the Akatar world, because that's why Bryce ends up being transported there because
Yeah.
Asteri says that that starlight will send you to where you're from. And she was trying to go to hell, but I think it ended up just taking her to where she was from. And hence she's landed in the night court and she's ended up there. Obviously, the Fae, like Rune, Bryce, are from Akatar world. And
Yeah.
and
So
so
I
I
guess that does call into question then, like, does the ACOTAR world connect to the Throne of Glass world at all? And so does she have that kind of like magic connection? I don't know. I just it to me it just makes a lot of sense. So I don't exactly quite know how all the worlds are going to kind of interact on a magic level, but I do think that Bryce and Hunt are that kind of like whatever Aelin and Rowan were with their magic. Cause and even if Bryce and Hunt are endgame, right? So even if there are people out there who are like, you guys are crazy, Bryce and Hunt are endgame, they could still not be mates, right? They could
Mhm.
still just have that magic connection. Bryce has another mate, right? Maybe it's Apollyon, maybe it's Adis, and maybe she chooses Hunt over her mate, right? And she chooses
Yeah.
that magic connection that she has instead of her mate connection. So that is also a possibility. But I don't know. I love it as an option.
Yeah, I mean, I could see Sarah J. Maas deciding to make it Endgame and keeping it that it's Bryce. And, we sort of at the end, we've seen Hunt potentially lose all his memories and that because they've tattooed the crown
Yeah.
to him again. So we don't know what Hunt's going to become. And I guess the typical story would be that they'll go back, they'll heal him, they'll live happily ever after. But gosh, I hope it's something more interesting than that because for me,
Yeah.
this relationship is boring and it just
Yeah.
doesn't seem epic enough. And I want it to be so much more epic. And I want more twists and turns as well. I mean, I feel like the problem with with Crescent City 2 was that there wasn't enough big story being told. There were little snippets here and there, but otherwise there was just this overarching sort of story about the mech suits and trying to find the rebels and this and that. And I don't know, but it just didn't really feel important, and I didn't connect with the story the way I have with others. It was only that last 100 pages that the story really ramped up. And
Yeah.
now, what is going to happen now that she's jumped into a different world? So
Yeah.
now I want to jump in quickly, Ali, into a theory you shared the other day on Instagram about what the Asteri are, what they possibly, and maybe a connection to the Varg. Did you want to talk about that one
Yeah,
today?
sure. I guess since again, like I was gonna wait until we kind of get into the mask first, but we
Spill
broke
it
our rules,
now.
so we'll just keep going with it. Okay, so for the longest time, I thought that the Asteri and the Vogue were the same thing, right? Like that was sort of my, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like they're the same thing, and so the Throne of Glass villains are the same as the Asteri, and that's kind of what was the villain in Prithian like 15,000 years ago or whatever. But once I started rereading this book and honestly, once I had the realization of like, oh, this is an angels and demons story, I
Yes.
was like, actually, the Vogue are different. They're a different thing. I think that the Princes of Hell and the Vogue are the same thing. And once I had that like realization and theory, I was like, I started to find so much more evidence for it. So we often see like we saw the Prince of the Chasm when or not, yeah, when the mystic goes and visits that one prince, he has black eyes. The Vogue have
Mhm.
black eyes. The
Yeah.
demons have black blood. The Vogue had black
Yeah.
blood. They had like levels of hierarchy. The Vogue did, right? There were like they were kings, and they had like kings
Yes.
and then minions under them. Same with like princes, princes, kings, same thing. There's
Yes.
hierarchy. So I am becoming more and more convinced that the Vogue are the same as the Princes of Hell, and that the Asteri are a separate being from
Yes.
them, which again
I
is why
agree with
I
that.
think there's been this like maybe for all of time, right? Potentially,
Mm.
or between the Asteris or the angels and the Vogue or the demons. Um,
It's so interesting. I definitely think the Asteri are a different being altogether. Like they are different. They feel like aliens to me. They're completely insane. They feed off this light. They completely different food source, that sort of thing. But the Valg and the Princess of Hell, I don't know how I feel about this because the Valg was so evil
so
and
evil,
they
right?
were so obsessed with just power and taking over people's minds and things like that. Whereas the Princes of Hell, particularly Apollyon and Thetis, feel so different. They have empathy,
Yeah,
they have care. I don't think we saw that in any of the Val that we saw in Throne of Glass. We didn't see any emotion. They just wanted to kill and destroy and overpower and
yeah,
come and take over the world. So obviously the intentions of the Princes of Hell in Crescent City 2 and 1 feel quite different. They feel much more good, basically.
yeah.
They feel like they've got
Well,
good intentions.
I thought, like, honestly, that too, like, I agree with you. I want Adis to be good. I want Apollyon to be good. But
Good.
then when I think about that scene with Thanatos, the Prince of the Chasm, the one that the mystic visits, and
Mhm.
he is sort of saying, I'm not like Apollyon and Adis.
Yes.
I just want to eat souls, right?
Yes.
That to me sounds like a Vogue. So it's like, what if the
True.
Vogue, the three kind of Vogue kings that came to the Throne of Glass world were sort of like lower level, right? And sort of like the lower
Mm.
level human
Yes.
you are, the
More
more kind of
evil.
base instincts, eater of worlds you are. And then kind of the higher level ones are, they want to have more to do with the world. They are, they can fall in love with people in the world. But then,
Yes.
that really makes me ask the question, then it's like, who is the good guy? Is this really just a story of like two bad guys fighting each other for all of time?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now, our awesome heroines, Bryce, Feyre, Nesta, hopefully Aelin, have to go and be like, you know what? You're all bad. We're just going to eliminate you all. That would be cool.
That would be cool. That would be cool. But then I also think that that's human nature as well, isn't it? Well, I mean, not that there's a lot more than that, but that they're not necessarily good or evil. It's about their
Right.
intentions and what they're trying to do. And that people's behavior can change whether they are theoretically a bad person or demon or whatever they are, or a good one. And we're just seeing in those princes that they have a lot more intention and good intention than just potentially just being hell, and everyone's just assuming they're evil, but they're perhaps potentially not as evil as we thought they would
As we
be.
know.
And I'm
Mhm.
very interested to see what they do in the next book. because I think that it's going to be so much bigger. And I think if Bryce gets an opportunity to travel to Hell and actually visit there, that's going to be game changing.
Yes.
Oh, I
Yeah.
really want to know. Do you think Bryce is even going to go back to Midgard in the third? Or do you think she's just going to be between Akatar and maybe Hell and just doesn't even go back there at all?
I have really wondered, like, what do I think is gonna happen in this book? Um, I don't know if I have an answer, honestly. And normally I would be like, "Oh, I hope she goes back for Hunt," but, like, I actually don't care if she doesn't go back for Hunt, you know? Like, I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." Like, he
Leave
can just
them.
stay there.
Leave
Yeah,
that
she's
hurt behind.
fine. Um, so I don't know. Like, she has to go back, I think, at
Eventually.
least at some point, because what I don't want, and I trust SJM, but, like, I don't think it would be fun to have a whole book where she's kind of off doing her thing, and then, like, the Midgard people are kinda doing their thing, and they don't
Mhm.
ever kinda team up. I
Yes.
think that wouldn't be very fun.
Mhm. But then it
But
worked
maybe
really
it would,
well
I
in
don't
Air
know.
of Fire. Like, Air of Fire is one of my favorite novels when,
They're
and
not
it's
together.
that and that
Yeah.
'cause that was just so changing for Aelin. Like, where she changed, she went from, Selena to Aelin and
Yeah,
found herself, found her power, found Rowan. It was epic, and she didn't end up going back till the 4th it was the 4th book that she ended up going back. So, I would be really open to this 3rd book being all about Bryce and her own personal growth and finding out who she really is, because at the moment, she doesn't wanna lead. She doesn't wanna control anything. She just wants to eat pizza and hook up with
yeah,
Hunt and just live her life, and, "Oh, yeah, I'm a princess, but I don't really wanna own that." Like, she needs to grow up and mature up, and she needs someone strong with her, I think, to empower her and grow her and
yeah,
help her realize who she should be and what a starborn queen is going to be. So I would
yeah,
love this to be all about that.
and I cannot wait for a sassy Nesta and a sassy Bryce to, to
Yes,
interact with each other. I am so excited for that. I actually think that, like, Nesta might be the one who is like, "You need to grow up, girl. Like, get your big girl pants on and be the queen that you are," you know? Because
yeah,
every time Bryce has gotten involved in something, it's kinda just been like she's, like, reluctant to do it, you know?
yes,
She's
and
like,
she's
"Oh, okay, like, I guess I'll do this," or, like, she's driven by, like, a need to wanna help her friends, to help people who are, like, weakened, like, she wants to help a meal, but it's not really driven by this, like, sense of, like, "I am powerful, I am a queen, and I have to save the world," you know?
exactly.
She hasn't gotten to that place yet,
No.
and I
It's
think
being
that that's gonna
thrust
be a big
upon
journey for
her
her.
rather than her owning it and saying, "Yes, this is who I am now and who I wanna be." She's sort of just like, "Oh, yeah, well, okay, I'm in this situation now, I have to do it." She does have care, and she's doing so many things behind everyone's backs. We end up finding out later on that she's been involved in something the whole time and just hasn't told people. So, she almost has some of Danica's elements there where she just
Yeah.
keeps a lot of secrets herself. But I still think she has a lot of maturing up to do. It'll be so interesting to see how her and Nesta play out. That would be so interesting, and whether they're actually gonna get along or whether they're going to clash. And as you say, whether Nesta's actually gonna pull her up and say, "Hey, you need to step up. I've gone through
Yeah.
my growth journey. You need to go through your growth journey."
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Oh my
Very
gosh, I
good.
can't wait. I can't believe we're, like, just 3 weeks away. I
I know,
truly
it is
I'm
so
so excited.
exciting, and I think on that note, we maybe need to wrap this up so that we
I
can
think
bring you
so.
our season 2 summary, and we can add
Yes.
more theories to this today. So,
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for listening. Like we said, we are definitely not done with Crescent City, Akasif. We have so many more ideas and theories. So please keep tuning in. Follow us on Instagram so that you can catch all of our live theories as we think them. And we look forward to bringing you more content. Bye.
bye.